Welcome to the newly branded Jane Healey Happy Hour, formerly Historical Happy Hour, the podcast that explores new and exciting novels of all genres. I'm your host, bestselling historical fiction author Jane Healey, and in today's episode, we welcome Janice Daley to discuss her latest novel, Between Two Flags, which has been called a gripping tale of courage and resilience. Welcome, Janice. Oh yeah, I have it on.
Thank you so much, Jane. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this. I know it just came out last week, so you've been very busy. So thanks for taking the time. I'm going to do a quick bio, and then we will dive in with questions.
Great.
A resident of Cape Cod, Janis Robinson Daley is the award-winning author of historical novels that bring overlooked women's stories into the light. Inspired by the discovery that an ancestor founded the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania in 1850, Daley's first two books celebrate pioneering women in medicine. Under Two Flags honors another woman whose extraordinary life unfolded in the shadows of history. She's also the founder of the annual literary citizenship initiative, 31 Titles Women in History, widely recognized by authors and readers as an innovative way to celebrate Women's History Month each March. Again, welcome.
Great. Thank you. I feel like I should have a wine glass in my hand for happy hour,
I know. It's a little early for that for this recording. I've got my extra large Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee with me.
There we go. There you go. Bloody Mary might work, but
That's right. Okay, so this is an extraordinary backstory about this novel. So it's based on a memoir ghostwritten by your grandfather.
yes.
Talk about the premise and why you decided to write it.
Yeah. So, I had two other books out. The Unlocked Path was my first book about the Women's Medical College. And then the second was a sequel, The Path Beneath Her Feet. This one had just gone into production in spring of 2024, ahead of its summer release. And I was diving into research for a next book and well into the idea, the time setting, the historical event that I wanted to tie it to. And my brother showed up on my doorstep one day, which was not unusual. He was my first editor. He was always dropping by with books on craft or books he thought I should read to get a better understanding of writing styles. But that day he had a different book in his hand, and it was actually a very old book. And it was off of his bookshelf called With Old Glory in Berlin. And we knew, obviously, that our grandfather was a novelist in Boston in the 1910s and 20s. But we also knew he had worked on a memoir that he had ghostwritten, actually for a flying ace from World War I that was from Newton, Massachusetts. So when I opened this book, he said, take a look at this one. I know you're into the women's history thing, and this one might be interesting to you, just to take a look at. And she's from Boston, where we grew up in the area. So I opened it up, and the first thing I noticed was that the byline, the author name was Josephine Therese. It's like, okay. But when you open the inside of the book, you see that it has a foreword from the editor. And that was signed Elliot H. Robinson, our grandfather. The more I started to get into the pages of the book, I was like, this is, yes, Josephine's story, but totally ghostwritten by our grandfather because it was the exact same style we had seen in his other books. But the more I'm reading it, or laboring through read it, because it was in 1918 prose, very dense, difficult to read. I'm still being gripped by the story of this young woman from Boston, 18 years old, who decides in the fall of 1916 to go to Berlin to study opera. There's a world war raging, and she's going to the, aggressor nation, Germany. And I'm feeling like, wow, her story of resilience and determination and passion needs to be brought forward, out of the shadows. No one's going to pick up this book published in 1918. And no. So I decided that my next book would be a retelling of Josephine's story and recast into historical fiction, thinking and hoping that more people would be apt to pick it up and read it. Yeah.
Excellent. So interesting. I love a good like backstory about how you come up with a new idea for a novel. So the main character, Josephine, she's an American Jew in Berlin. She's an opera student, and of course, the memoir must have been a huge source in terms of finding her voice.
Right.
But what was your character development process like for her?
So I definitely use the memoir as a guideline and as as a skeleton to build out upon. But she didn't reveal, too much about her own backstory. And more importantly for me, I'm thinking, what drove that passion to the extent that she wanted to go to Berlin to study because that's where the finest music conservatory was. So I did some more research. The first thing I actually had to do was find out what was her last name because it was not revealed in the
Oh,
book. When it published in 1918, she was concerned about her identity that German sympathizers might not take kindly to all that she was revealing about life in Berlin during the war because of the German propaganda machine. So the very first thing I had to do was find out what her full name was,
yeah.
which I did with the help of actually an archivist at the Boston Public Library. We found Marzinski. And then from there, I was able to um, learn about her father's death when she was a teenager and she was the oldest of the family, and how might that have shaped her. That she did study singing in Boston with a very fine voice instructor at the time. That she was Jewish. She didn't reveal that anywhere in the memoir. And I don't know if that was, again, fear of anti-Semitism at the time, but I found that on, some of her documents. So those were some of the key, character development pieces I wanted to nurture further and build her out and build her character arc out as well.
Yeah, and I read in your author's notes that she didn't mention that she was Jewish in the memoir, which I thought was so interesting. I think it really enriched the story to incorporate her Jewishness into her character and into her experience when she goes to Berlin. I mean, I can't,
Sure.
yeah, that
Yeah,
must
and
have
I
been.
think, pretty much anyone of any faith, when you're in serious, life-threatening situations, are going to draw upon your faith in some manner
Hmm.
to support you and to
Yeah.
uplift you. And so that's what I brought into the retelling as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so music is obviously a big part of Josephine's life. Gifted opera singer. Are you musical? And did you find like how'd you like research and kind of get in her head in that way?
Yeah, not a musical bone in my body, even though my grandfather, the novelist, actually wrote music and
Oh
performed in a
wow.
church choir in Boston. That gene did not get passed on. Um, I was the one who studied ballet for 10 years, and I still had to count the beat of the music. Uh, Everybody else was just flowing with the music. So I decided, well, I need to learn more about music. I need to learn about the study of music, particularly the training of an opera student. So, very fortunate, I connected with a woman at the New England Conservatory right in Boston, who is a voice instructor, Jessica Block. And she was fabulous. She invited me to come down and interview her so I could understand what was her passion, what made her switch courses from starting out as a pre-med student and going on into voice. So I interviewed her, and then she also invited me to come back and sit in on one of her classes with one of her
Oh,
students.
cool.
And that was amazing to watch, the warm-up exercises and then Jessica's critique of the young woman's performance that she was working toward.
Oh, very cool. I want to ask more about your research because this takes place, Berlin, dawn of World War One, and I think there's been some historical fiction written about that era, but not as much as say World War Two. So, talk about your research about for the whole story about the time and the place, and
Mhm.
was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, so there is good material in the original book.
Hmm.
Josephine's almost diary-like entries about living through rations and how it affected the populace, how it affected the people. That conscription age for the German men was down to the age of 17 at that point. So watching sons and brothers, marching off, in the streets off to France. Um, so a little bit of that was in the book, but I definitely dove into more research to understand that. I found another memoir actually about a English woman who was married to Prussian nobility, and she was living in Berlin at the same time. So that was also rich material, and I kind of borrowed a couple of her experiences and ascribed them to Josephine as well because of the fiction part of the story.
Oh yeah, yeah. You mentioned that book in your research notes as well. So I want to talk about like you structured this because she's musical in kind of acts and overture and intermission. And so was that something that you like planned on from the very beginning, or is that something you added later on in the process?
Definitely, I added it. I started out with literally going through chapter by chapter of the original memoir and rebuilding it, amid deleting a lot. She had so many extraneous people that she mentioned once and then disappeared. I was like, well, no, it's going to bog down the story because it does bog down the story. And then the further I got into it, and as I was nearing the completion. I felt, how and why did I come to write this? Well, it was because the book by my grandfather was on my brother's shelf. And I thought, I want to include that as well.
Hmm.
And how can I weave in her interaction with my grandfather? So that's when I came up with the idea of like, well, an opening of a performance is the overture. Then there's an intermission, and then there's a finale when you wrap everything up. So I decided I'd use that approach. And so
Hmm.
I do have those three moments in the book where my grandfather, and he's named as Mr. Robinson, appears and has, direct dialogue assumed with Josephine as they're writing her story. Yeah.
Very cool. Um, I want to talk about kind of the found family cast of characters around her. You said that in the original memoir, there was a lot of different people you could have chosen from, and you had to kind of distill that down. How did you develop the characters like the Mullers and the love interest? Like, how did you come up with those?
Yeah, so certainly the family that she went to live with, um, she called them the Millers. I wanted to make them more German, and they were the Mullers with a U. Um, definitely they embraced her. They invited her to come and live with them as an American, even though at the time, the U.S. was still neutral. So I really wanted to develop that family and have them become her family, in lieu of the family she had left behind. She did have a cousin that was German. The original book was a little sketchy of what was his family connection, so I kind of made that a much more direct, that it was her mother's nephew. And then a few of the students around her becoming also her found family, a couple of them, not all of them,
Hmm.
um, because those other people in our lives, particularly who become our friends, also become family. So
Hmm.
I wanted to focus on that family connection because she had left her family completely behind in America. And so she needed that support to help her get through all that she was. And then the love interest, when I was writing my first book and I was so focused on women empowerment and the history and the events, and I had an editor say, you got to throw a love interest in. just to make it a little bit more appealing. I was like, okay, so the love interest, yes, the German officer is in the original book, but I play it up a little bit more of what could have been their relationship.
I always like a good love interest. Yeah, I
Sure.
agree. Yeah. If two Under Two Flags became a movie, who would be your dream actor to play Josephine?
Oh boy, I was just thinking of this the other day because I had been thinking of who I had cast for my first two books. Um, and I don't know all the young actors and
Me
actresses,
neither. I was like trying to think
unfortunately.
myself, and I'm like, oh, I don't know,
Um,
Natalie
so
Portman. I
so
don't.
let's go with and I won't pronounce her name correctly. Alicia Van oh
Oh, I don't know. I wish I could help you out there. I don't know
I
what.
can only remember her because I remember her at the Academy Awards a couple of years ago in a beautiful yellow Louis Vuitton dress. And my niece worked for Louis Vuitton, so I was always walking, watching.
Oh, cool.
Who was she dressing? Alicia Van something something.
Okay, all right.
But she's a very talented, self-assured young woman that I think would do a good job with Josephine's character.
Cool. What is your writing? I always have some writing questions for the second half of the interview. What's your writing process like? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Are you somewhere in between?
Somewhat in between. Start with a rough plot outline, but then I always find, even though I've done a ton of research up front, I always pause to do some more research, and that, takes you down those rabbit holes, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's interesting. I think I need to reshape this scene or this chapter and include that. And then how am I going to, do that as I look back and see how it will naturally flow in. So a little bit of both for sure. But I need to have a very rough outline first to,
Mhm.
to get me started.
Um, and this novel, you had the memoir as like a primary source material, right?
Yeah.
How is that different from your first two novels in terms of like having that base?
Yeah, so my first two novels, I did use some primary sources in the terms of letters and correspondence that I found in the archives of the Women's Medical College, which is held now by Drexel University. Uh, but this one, I really did rely deeply on Josephine's information in the book that she revealed. And then, other primary sources was what I found in my research, where I plugged her name into ancestry.com
Hmm.
and what did I found, including even the death certificate for her father,
Oh, wow.
which all she had just mentioned that her father had passed, but not how or why or too much when. And, he was a Polish immigrant. So, how did that shape her and what values would he have perhaps instilled in her, which she carried through, which primarily was her patriotism and her connection to being an American, where her father was an immigrant and thinking that at the time, certainly, immigrants were eager to assimilate and
Hmm. Hmm.
to be proud to say that their children born in America were
Yeah,
American citizens. Yeah.
excellent. What is the hardest part of the process, or the part you find the most challenging, and the part you enjoy the most in terms of writing?
The most challenging is the editing.
Really? That's interesting because I find the first draft the hardest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, yes, getting started, but I think because I'm so excited to get the story done and
Mm.
onto some form, on my
Yeah.
keyboard or on my screen. That's the exciting part. But then the editing of going back in and saying, all right, I know stuff needs to be cut. What's going to be cut? I know scenes need to be developed further, but where and how?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the editing part's the most challenging, and taking, feedback from my beta readers and from my editor and saying, do I agree with them or not?
Do you have a community of beta readers, or like a writing group or something like that you work with?
Not a formal writing group where we do critique swaps or anything, but I do have now, since I've had three books out now, a very reliable circle of beta readers. I have two that have read all three of my books. They are writers. Ashley
Mhm.
Sweeney, who's a historical fiction author. She's actually become my writing mentor.
Nice.
And then another gentleman. So I always get the male perspective, is
Mhm.
important when you're writing women's historical fiction, and there are male characters. And I met him at a writing retreat, Dennis Blackman, and then just a an avid reader who is a very critical reader as
Mhm.
well that I've met through my online book club, Deb Kiley. She has been, and she dives deep for me. She asks the questions about, accuracy of the historical facts that I'm throwing in there. She's like, well, I researched it further and I don't know about that.
Oh, always good to have those people.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, do you have a writing routine when you're on deadline for a project?
I try to. I am not no longer working full time in the corporate world. That ended a year and a half ago, but I've never been a morning person. I applaud those people that can get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and write. No, never, ever. So when I'm focused on deadline and I know kind of my goals of, word count per day or per session, I write at night, like 7 to 9.
Hmm.
And I can't do a lot. I can't sit down in 8 hours and write. I just can't. I have to get through one scene and fully immerse myself in that scene. And then I get up in the next morning, not early, and after I've had my first cup of coffee, I'll reread what I wrote the night before, just while it's still fresh, to see if I need to tweak anything or do I need to do additional research right on the spot, and then
Hmm.
get back to it. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
takes me a while.
No, I think that, and I mean, I think that it's such a like it's such a mind, like so much thought and focus and concentration has to, especially with that first draft. I find most writers I talk to, like I can do 4 to 5 hours and then I'm toast. Like I can't do more than that a day. It's because it's just too much brain work for me.
Right.
I need to go for a walk or like do
Yes.
something else. Yeah, yeah. So I feel that. Yeah. Um, what's the best advice you can give aspiring authors?
Don't give up. I mean, if you believe in the project that you're working on and you have that passion to tell that story, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many different ways. We're fortunate today, to get published.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, just hold tight to your confidence and your belief, and don't let it go, because if you feel that this story does need to be told and shared with others, you can make it happen.
Excellent advice. Are you ready to share what you are working on next?
Not full details, but I'm going back to that original story idea that I had before my brother showed up on my doorstep. So it will also be World War I based,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that it is an underrepresented era. It is focused on an event that occurred, so a singular event during the war. Um, and there's a little Easter egg planted in Under Two Flags that talks about that event. So I guess you have to read
Oh,
that book to get more
cool.
details and try to figure out which event I'm talking about. But it will be very significant, especially to people from Boston.
Oh, cool. That's great. I love anything that's connected to Boston.
Yes.
Obviously. How can readers best stay in touch with you?
Yep. So I am on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Don't be looking for me anywhere else. I'm just on those two. That's all I can manage. So Facebook, it's just Janis Robinson Daley, author, and Instagram, it's Janis R. Daley underscore writer. And so those are my two public accounts. And then I'm on my website, Janice with an S, or Daly, Daly, .com. I have a very robust website, and an annoying little pop-up that encourages you to sign up for my newsletter that goes out just once a month. I tell people I'm not going to inundate you in your inbox. So follow me on social, or sign up for my newsletter to get more information on my updates and all my events that I'm doing.
Awesome. This was delightful, Janice. Thank you so much. Congratulations on your great new novel, your third. Under Two Flags released last week, so it's available wherever books are sold. Congratulations again. My latest novel from Lake Union, Women of Arlington Hall, is out now. Don't forget to follow I keep doing that. Don't forget to follow Happy Hour wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Janice. Congratulations again, and take care. Good luck with your launch.